Hundreds of scenes for action films are shot every year, but there is no doubt that some are more expensive than others due to all the effects involved in making certain scenes such as stunts, deaths, explosions, floods, tremors, and various special effects. And in this video, you will learn some of the most expensive movie scenes ever filmed. Make sure you stick with me till the end. Without any further delay, let's get into it. Let's start with the Pacific's landing on the beach scene. At $217 million, The Pacific is the most expensive miniseries ever made. The Peleliu Beach landings alone cost $5 million, a figure that becomes even more startling when you read The Hollywood Reporter's breakdown of the bill. Some 300 actors worked on the 4-day shoot. The daily lead's fee was $700, the stunt extras $150, and the regular extras $70. This was cheap according to the producers, who eschewed the big stars to offset the show's real money burners, uniforms, effects, visuals, and a whole arsenal of weapons, tanks, and explosives. Costume designer Penny Rose oversaw the creation of 3,000 uniforms, which were made from 215,000 square feet of herringbone twill. Furthermore, all the material was woven in India on ancient looms to reproduce the weaving of the time. Meanwhile, in the artillery department, there were 50,000 rounds of blank ammunition, 1,800 large arms, 20 bundles of dynamite, and 40 rounds of howitzers and grenades. The streams of blood packaged under the actors' uniforms were controlled by 24 radio receivers, each costing $1,000. These were operated by 93 technicians, each of whom, of course, went home with a paycheck. The next is Lost's plane crash scene. The show costs money. That's why the pilot episode of Lost, which depicts a plane crash, cost ABC between $10 million and $14 million. The scene was built in several places. It began aboard a simulated airplane interior on the California soundstage, where director J.J. Abrams used a deft mix of practical ingenuity and CGI to capture the horrific panic. As the plane falls from the sky, the CGI takes over as we see the plane break up and scatter across the ocean. Then, at sea level, we catch a glimpse of the tail sinking below the waves as the survivors make their way to shore, paddling and screaming. These haunting moments were filmed off of the coast of Oahu, Hawaii. It was here that the most expensive accessory was used, a decommissioned airliner. The passenger plane was purchased in the Mojave Desert and then transported to Hawaii, where it was catastrophically staged. Such an epic and multifaceted scene would have incurred huge costs at every stage of production. Fortunately, ABC's investment would pay off handsomely, and Lost would go on to become one of the biggest shows of the 2000s. Up next, Game of Thrones, the Battle of Winterfell scene. Game of Thrones was a great show, a very big show. Everything was grand and huge, including the budget. HBO didn't provide scene-by-scene information, but Metro reports that the notorious 8th season cost $90 million, which means $15 million for each of the season's 6 episodes. Of these, the Battle of Winterfell, seen in the season's 3rd episode, The Night Long, is likely to cost the most. The next expensive movie scene worth mentioning is the Queen's wedding scene in The Crown. Budgets often go up when it comes to battles and dragons. The Crown has none of those things, but 70 years of royal history doesn't come cheap. In fact, The Crown is one of the most expensive shows ever made, with the first season costing $130 million. The most expensive scene in the 10-episode run is Queen Elizabeth II's wedding, which features a replica dress that cost $37,000, according to Harper's Bazaar. This standout dress was just one part of the show's ornate grandeur. Another expensive movie scene on the list is the underwater scene of the Sense8 Christmas special. Sense8 was always going to be an expensive show because its 8 characters are from all corners of the earth. Sure, film and TV have a way of making Toronto pass for New York, or southern Spain for the American West. But Netflix decided to do it right with Sense8 by sending the crew here, there, and everywhere. According to Wired, this globe-trotting CGI extravaganza was costing the streamer $9 million per episode when it was canceled in June 2017. Of the show's 24 episodes, the Season 2 Christmas special was probably the most expensive. In particular, an underwater scene that took the cast and crew all the way to Malta to film. What about the zombie clothesline scene of The Walking Dead? Many fans like to see their protagonists kick butt, especially when it comes to zombies. Representing this is usually a fairly modest affair, at least in the scheme of mega-budget television. After all, The Walking Dead is averaging $2.75 million per episode, down from its Season 1 fee of $3 million, and marketably less than other shows on this list. Which scene took the most of this budget? Well, the 9th episode of Season 7 saw prices go up when it featured 2 piles of trash, a line of barbed wire, and plenty of zombies. Or to use the show's vocabulary, lots of walkers. First, you have the cost of the extras, which include your daily rate and the increased facilities, i.e. the catering, but most of the cost was likely incurred during post-production. Processing all those CGI flying limbs doesn't come cheap. Even the moans and groans of the walkers were added by audio specialists. The extras are asked to remain silent. As usual, this scene was an expansion of a budget that was already packed with stunning detail. For example, Yoohoo reports that AMC paid families in Sonoya, Georgia, where most of the series is filmed, $400 a month to offset the hassle of production and discourage them from sharing spoilers. The next in the list is the Thanksgiving scene of Friends. When Friends began in 1994, the budget was so tight that the producers had to use the bottle episode, which required the crew to use a few sets as possible and not even think about having special guests. Instead, the show would have to rely on the script and the performances of the actors. How dated. For his efforts, Mercado reported that each cast member was paid $22,000 per episode. By the 3rd season, this had risen to $75,000 per episode. Well, as possibly everyone on the face of the earth knows, Friends would go on to become one of the biggest shows in American television history, earning Warner Brothers an annual syndication revenue of $1 billion. Next is the pilot scene in Fringe. As with Lost in 2004, showrunner J.J. Abrams wanted Fringe to make a strong first impression. Unfortunately for Fox executives, a sequence that included dozens of extras, dazzling special effects, and a custom set would contribute to a $10 million budget. This was doable. The usual budget for the pilot in 2008, when television was firmly in its golden age, but was still perceived as cinema's junior cousin. But executives were quickly catching up, including director-producer Harry Weiner, who observed that viewers are much more sophisticated now. They demand higher production values and higher quality special effects. Viewers of Fringe got these made in spades. The cost breakdown would have shared a lot in common with Lost. A simulated airplane interior, a soundstage, detailed CGI, only this time, there was a lot of Tom Savinius gore applied to a dozen extras aboard a doomed plane. Fringe cost $4 million per episode. Action Pieces scene of Jack Ryan was also quite an expensive movie scene. Jack Ryan is one of Amazon's proudest displays. They announced the company's intention to spend a lot of money on big dramas, $8 million per episode to be exact. Every action scene is an explosive treatment to the deep pockets of Amazon. Identifying a certain scene isn't easy because there are so many to choose from, but the subway shootout in Season 1, Episode 8 is the highlight. As with much of the contemporary television, the lines between reality and CGI blur as Jack Ryan makes his way through the subway tunnel with gun in hand. After a brief firefight with two thugs, the train speeds down the track, wiping out one of the men Ryan has just shot. You can bet this CGI-driven moment took a big bite out of the episode's budget. Up next, marriage to Mark Hamill's scene in The Big Bang Theory. Here's the latest sitcom, whose budget grew with its ratings. According to Cheat Sheet, Johnny Galecki and Jim Parsons used their modest star power to negotiate $45,000 per episode when The Big Bang Theory was released in 2007. In later seasons, their stars were earning up to $1 million per episode. The Big Bang Theory had become a massive show in its 11th season. Its 250 episodes brimmed with the geeky affections that fans from around the world identified with. For the final episode of the season, which featured the marriage of Amy and Sheldon, the Chuck Lorre show needed a star special. That star, of course, was Mark Hamill, the iconic Star Wars actor. It was the final touch for a special group of guests that included Kathy Bates, Jerry O'Connell, John Ross Bowie, Courtney Hengler, Laurie Metcalf, Brian Posehn, and Will Wheaton, all at $9 million per episode. That concludes today's video. If you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. See you next time!